Hi there, thanks for tuning in and listening to The Heavy Corner. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who checked out the first episode with Kane from The Amenta. It was really cool to see that there were listeners from all over Australia, America, the UK, Finland, and also people from as far away as Chile and Turkey who checked it out. If this is your first time listening, I'm your host, Annalise, and today's guest is my dad, also known as Matt from Mortal Sin. So I grew up listening to all of his stories about the Australian metal scene back in the 80s, how the band started, and of course the infamous Metallica tour here in Australia in 1989. It wasn't until the band reunited in 2004 that I was finally able to see them live. And I thought it would be a really cool and interesting project to document parts of the band's history and get him to share some of those stories that I grew up with all of you guys. This was a longer episode, so I've split it into two parts. The next episode will air later this week, and I can't wait for you guys to hear all of it. Thanks again. See you soon. So, growing up in good old Western Sydney and a family of 7, were you the only musical one? I can't even remember if there's anyone else in the family that plays music aside from just appreciating it.
Well, I wasn't really musical at all. Chris, one younger than me, Chris he could play anything. He could just pick up any instrument and just play. And I'm like, how can you play and I don't know anything? I don't know. He just seemed to know how to do things and I didn't.
When did you start singing?
Singing? I probably didn't really start singing until maybe high school, like year 11 and 12. I think... Look, I might have sung along to songs when you're listening to albums and stuff, but I didn't consider myself a singer or anything. I just liked singing along. So when we got to year 11 and 12, we were a little more older and going to parties and you'd have a few drinks and you'd just sing along to Zeppelin and all that sort of stuff. And then I guess everyone thought I was an all right singer, I think. And when I was in year 12, we were kind of mucking around, just let's form a band kind of vibe. And it wasn't going to be really a band; it was just going to be a joke band. And we were going to call ourselves the Scholastic Gaskets, which at the time there was a TV commercial on with a racing car driver. I think it was Alan Moss or something like that, and he had an ad on TV which was about Scholastic Gaskets, and we just thought it was funny, And then when we were choosing who was going to be in the band, everyone just sort of pointed to me and said, "Well, you're going to be the singer," and I'm like, "What? I'm not a singer. I can't sing." And yeah, you can. Yeah, no, well, we're only mucking around. So okay, all right. If we're only just mucking around, well, I guess I'm the singer. And over the period of the year, it sort of went from being a joke band to, why don't we just play a gig? Why don't we play a party? And well, Steve Edmonds was chosen as the drummer. He was in a year lower than us, but we were friends with him at school, and he actually lived at my mum's house with us when he ran away from home at one stage. But before that, we did a party at his mum's place, which I think was like Quakers Hill or something like that. And so Scholastic Gaskets was born. We were just, we had probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 songs. We were just doing Led Zeppelin covers, maybe some Deep Purple at the time, which was 1979 we're talking about. So, like the real heavy metal was at the time, it was consisted of Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Nazareth, Budgie, all that sort of stuff. And they're the kind of bands that I listened to from, having, what did I have, 3 big brothers who, had their own record collections and things like that. So I basically, whenever they were playing a record, I was listening, and there was a a pretty good collection there. And one brother just above me, Danny, he was probably the biggest influence on my musical taste, because he was sort of playing, early Queen. He showed us all the Budgie stuff. He showed us Nazareth, Mike Oldfield. It's not metal, but he had such a diverse kind of range of musical stuff. So I kind of, when it came time to me buying my own records, once I had a job sort of late 79, 80, I started to buy similar stuff. I was buying Ted Nugent, Sammy Hagar, all kind of classic rock stuff, along with, I guess I didn't really have to buy Sabbath or anything like that, because we already had those records in the house. So for me, it was about, you're looking at covers. We used to go, there was a store in Blacktown called Ward's, and it was a second-hand store, and it was basically right opposite the station. So, if you caught the train or the bus, you basically got off, and there it was. Ward's record store was right there. So, any time I used to go into Blacktown, that was my first stop. It was, you walked in, you looked for records. I used to collect a lot of Hendrix at the time as well, and this was a store that had just so many records. There was bootlegs and rare stuff, picture discs, stuff that, when you're a young, impressionable kid, when you're going into your adulthood, the first thing you want to do is just get all the cool stuff. So I think pretty much every paycheck for me was going and buying albums, 5, 6, 7, 8 albums. When you were at Ward's, an album was like $6, $5 if you're lucky, second hand. So by the time I left school in 1980, I probably had amassed 300 or 400 records.
Was that the inspiration to open the shop?
Oh, well, that was a long time later. That was like 10 years later, the shop was basically started on me selling pretty much all those records in the end. But, it was an interesting time, because the late 70s and the very early 80s, it was way before Metallica. The new wave of British heavy metal, the new album, when you read about that sort of stuff, that's really what was just coming in. Iron Maiden was probably the biggest, and we sort of had started hearing about them probably 79, 80 in Australia, maybe 81, 82. Judas Priest was 80, 81, 82, 83. Def Leppard, 81, 82, 83. So it was just sort of starting. The whole scene was turning from, just this new wave of British heavy metal into like a worldwide scene. And it was kind of, that was the early influences. So when I first, like after the Celestic Gaskets, we probably were doing that kind of thing. Celestic Gaskets became Galleon, which became Crash Landing, which became Checks in the Mail, all that sort of stuff. We were still kind of listening to and playing the classic stuff, even Cream and stuff like that, anything sort of from 75 to probably 80, 81. And then when Maiden came out, I think it sort of inspired a lot of people a little more musically, because they were a lot more musically. Their songs were there was a lot of storytelling, and the playing was different. And it was, I think a lot of people kind of went from the classic metal to, wow, this is really musical. And I think it got a lot of, the guitarists and that sort of trying to play the riffs and stuff. And I think that sort of moved everyone out of the old school kind of category and into, I guess if you wanted to call it, the new school category. And then, the following years, 83, 84, which was when, Metallica, Slayer, Exodus, those, the first wave of thrash metal started to come through. So, we had just started to get musical with the Iron Maiden and the Def Leppards and the Motley Crues and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden this thrash music came out, and it was like, what? Wow, what the hell is this stuff? This is pretty cool, I mean, look, while I was at school, we also listened to a lot of punk, 70, 79 and 80 was, you had Cheap Trick, you had XTC, you had The Clash, you had Sex Pistols. So in the middle of what metal was happening, the punk scene was kind of upping it up a touch. They were, I don't know, they moved on from the metal and were kind of playing this. It wasn't so aggressive, but it was different enough so that when the thrash bands had come in, they picked up on all the punk stuff and all the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, combined the two, which kind of gave the thrash. It was a little more aggressive. The very early thrash stuff was sort of like punch in the face, fast, aggressive, which was kind of built on, the Ramones and the Pistols and that sort of stuff, So it's hard to explain to a younger person who sees all this sort of stuff in hindsight, but we lived through all of it. So we lived through, even for me, it was the Beatles, late 60s, then the Sabbaths and the Zeppelins and that stuff, and then the punk, and then the thrash metal. So, it was like a progression, getting harder and harder and heavier, then faster and faster, and then bang, slap in the face stuff. It was like, wow. That's what got me. I mean, to be honest, when I used to listen to a lot of compilation albums, because to me compilation albums is you didn't have to commit to buying a full album. You could just, you turn the compilation over and this band looks cool. Wow, look, there's like 8 cool bands on there. Let's have a listen, And one band I'd heard was Accept, and I think one of the songs on one of the compilations was Fast as a Shark, which is the first time I'd heard Double Kick. It was like, what is this stuff? Like this is so powerful. And I had a stereo at home. I was still living at home at the time, and I would just crank it to 10, and just listen to this Double Kick stuff. And wow, I love this kind of vibe. This is what I want to play. And this is around 1980. So we were had just been moving on from that Celestic Gaskets muck around stuff and playing, the old school kind of vibe where it came into my head where this is what I want to do. This is kind of, how do I find other people that want to do this stuff, And then it wasn't really until 83, 84, because like in the middle of around 82, 83, 84, I was playing in a Judas Priest cover band. I don't know why. I guess because I could sing the songs, It was basically, that was the music, If it wasn't Maiden, it was Judas Priest that everyone was sort of into. That was just before Metallica hit. So I was playing that kind of stuff. And then it was, yes, out. Look, can you see who's up there? Can you see who's on the screen? I was doing that sort of stuff, and then I was in a band called Fury, which was Greg Smith, who became the singer in Addictive, and Joe Buttigieg, who was the guitarist in Addictive, and then a few other guys. Manuel Texan, who was in Slaughterlord for a while. So these were the early stages of get outside, please. These were the early stages of the thrash kind of slowly building in, even though the band Fury was, only a slight progression on from doing the Judas Priest stuff. We played a couple of Motley Crue things. We played some Ozzy Osbourne, and then that was around, I think, 83. And then 84, when Kill 'Em All came out, I think we came out in 83, but we didn't really get it in Australia till like 84. and then everyone started talking about it. So it was like, man, no, this is what we got to play. This is the kind. So going from the old school rock to the Ozzy Osbournes and the Motley Crues, and then it's like got to play this kind of fast, aggressive music. This was what was in my head of what would be cool. So 84, I was still doing the Judas Priest thing, and then 85 came around. At the time I was coming back from a Judas Priest cover band rehearsal, and I ran into Wayne Campbell on a train. I didn't know him. I was just playing a ghetto blaster and playing some metal. It was a quiet train. It was a thunderstorm going on. A lightning strike hit the train. The train stopped. So we were sitting in the middle of platform. Two platforms, couldn't go anywhere. So and I think he'd come through the carriage and heard me playing and just struck up a conversation. He was like, "Oh, are you in a band?" I said, "Oh, you're just a cover band." "You in a band?" "Oh, yeah, we're just," we started talking about all that stuff, and then Metallica, Slayer, and all that sort of Exodus sort of came into the conversation. So, and I was like, "Oh, you like all that stuff too?" And he said, "Yeah, man, yeah, we love all that stuff." And since he was a drummer and I was a singer, he was like, "Well, man, we should try and get a band together," And he said, "Well, I'm in a band called Wizard, so why don't you come down to one of our rehearsals?" And so I think like a week later I'd gone to a rehearsal. And Wizard was this kind of band who was still sort of stuck into that, new wave of British heavy metal. They were playing some of their own songs, but it was very inspired by Iron Maiden. It was kind of, I guess you would call in those days, like 79, 80 through to about 84, 85, Iron Maiden was kind of progressive. Their runs, the way they played their guitar, it was different to all of the other stuff. So they were kind of playing that style of music, and I sang a couple of songs, but I was kind of singing a little rough and a little grotty and a little gruffy kind of James Hetfield kind of vibe, and they didn't like it. They wanted a Bruce Dickinson kind of singer, yeah, which I could do. I could sing any Maiden song, and I did sing. When we were with them, we did a few covers. Like Hello Be Thy Name, or some of the earlier stuff, and I could do them pretty well. But I didn't want to sing like that. I wanted to sing, the thrashy metal kind of vibe. So I think I'd probably done 2, maybe 3 rehearsals with them, or jams, I guess. And they were sort of talking amongst themselves, and I got the vibe that they didn't like it, but Wayne did and Keith did. And Keith was the guitarist, and then so between the three of us, we just decided, well, why don't we just walk away from those guys and form our own band?
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, well, that'd be really good. And Keith was this guitar player who he was solid, and he could write. So we had a pretty good start there. He knew how to write a song, and he was a little more interested in the heavier side of stuff as well. So I think, I don't know if it was straight after that, but it was within a few weeks or a few months of that where we decided to have our own jam and sort of look for other musicians. And I think at the time we auditioned several guitarists and several bass players. And one of the bass players that came along and jammed was Steve King. Well, Steve King, I don't know whether you know or not, he played with Rose Tattoo for quite a while. Like after that, not before that. But he was a good, solid player. But we didn't sort of get much of a. He sort of played more hard rocky kind of vibe, where we wanted someone who was more into the, I don't know, cross from Steve Harris and maybe Cliff Burton, someone who could really play heavy. So I think we probably tried out I don't know, maybe 6, 7 bass players, and we also tried out, I don't know, maybe 10 guitarists. We did actually have some guitarists for a while. We had a guy named Nobby who was in a local band called China White. He was actually really good, but again, he was kind of more into the Maiden vibe, not into the thrash vibe. And then we had another guy called Neville Reynolds. Now, Neville Reynolds, he was more into the thrashier side, and so he kind of was the one that got the job. So this was before Paul Caruana. Now the reason we changed from Neville to Paul Caruana because from 1985 we sort of started jamming earlier in the year in 85, and then we were sort of getting to the point where we want to play. We sort of get some gigs together. It happened pretty quick. We'd actually had written, in that period, like the 6 months of 1985, we'd probably written 6 songs. Like they came pretty fast. They're pretty basic songs. Some of the earlier songs were Metal City, which was just like Metal City, drive you mad, Metal City, ain't that bad. It was kind of really, really simple.
Motley Crue-ish.
And then there was another song which was called Evil, 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 evil in my veins. It was real simple stuff, but it was catchy. It was kind of along the lines of Metallica's Seek and Destroy, dun, 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 really kind of just heavy riffs, not quite fast at the time. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we decided, we got to start playing gigs, like we want to get in, because no one was really playing gigs at the time. You're talking 85, late 85 to 1986, so by the beginning of the year, we'd booked our first gig in 86. I think it was February or January. Yeah, I think it was January. And Neville, the guitarist, he said, I'm going overseas. I'm going overseas for Christmas, seeing the family, going to be there for, I don't know, a month or 2 months, whatever. I was like, well, we got a gig, dude. It's our first gig. You got to be there. He's like, I can't change the trip, blah, blah, blah. So, we sacked him. It was like, we'll see ya. It was basically, that was the attitude in the band. We were ready and we wanted to play and nothing was going to stop us. At the time, we'd got, I don't know, I can't remember when this all sort of happened, whether Andy came before Paul or Paul came before Andy. I think Andy was in the band, and he said, I know this guy, he was in the band Judge with us. He's into Sabbath, but he loves thrash stuff as well. So I thought, if you like Sabbath, it's kind of evil, heavy, doomy kind of riffs, and you like thrash as well. I was like, yeah, all right, come along. So he came along for a jam. It's like, yep, you're it. Because we had a gig in 2 months, so we had to get someone. It was like, yep, you're in.
Not a lot of choice.
Yeah, so that was pretty much the lead up to our first shows, which were January 86. And then, so we did that show. It was at the Royal Hotel in Sutherland. And I think we were only like a support band, but, for us it didn't matter. It was just a gig. We were playing with, I think it was Lotus and Lightning Rock or something like that, which at the time, Lightning Rock was just a hard rock band who were doing, what we were doing years ago. So, Deep Purple, that sort of stuff. A little bit of Iron Maiden. And Lotus were kind of a little more metal than hard rock. So, it was a bit of a mismatch. It was at the time, it didn't matter. We were going there. We kind of had our own little following. There was people who would come to rehearsals, and we knew a lot of people who were into thrash, but there was no thrash band. There was no, in Sydney anyway, there was no thrash bands that were playing. So once word got out that we were going to play, there was a lot of people interested. So we rocked up to this Royal Hotel in Sutherland, and there was a decent sort of a crowd. I think there was probably 300 or 400 people, and we had a set which had, I think it was like those 5 or 6 of our own songs. So yeah, it was basically I think we went on first, and the crowd just went nuts, and it was like, wow, yeah. They sort of had the feeling that I had the feeling, back in earlier times when I first heard the music. It was like, this is crazy stuff. Well, then when you were playing to a crowd, they had all the same feelings. So they was, this is all crazy, yeah, this is what we want to hear, this is what we want to see. So basically we played our set, and then everyone went home. Because they didn't want to see Lotus, they didn't want to see Light and Rock, they just wanted to see us. So basically, I think there was like maybe 50 people left in the room that stayed to, watch the other band. So that was pretty much the start of the Sydney scene. I don't know what the other scenes were like in Melbourne and all that sort of stuff, but in Sydney, we were probably, one of the first thrash bands to play. There might have been other bands around who were playing the stuff, but I think that was, you could probably arguably say that was the first thrash gig in Sydney. While we were at the gig, there was a couple of agents there, that we were trying to get more gigs with, So when you're a thrash band and when you're playing a kind of music that no one's ever heard before, very hard to get gigs. It's like, well, we don't know what kind of music you play, blah, 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 blah. We showed them videos and stuff. It's like, I don't know if we want that in our hotel. It looks a bit scary to us. But once we played a gig, one of the promoters who was in charge of the Royal Hotel was also in charge of the Seven Hills Inn. We said to her, can we get another gig, Look, did you see this, And she was like, yeah, it was kind of, it was scary, but yeah, you got some people along, so yeah, all right, we can give you some gigs. So once we kind of got the okay, it was one, we got our foot into the door. It was like, right, we're not going to let this door close. We have to just keep booking, and as I said, being this heavier, we used to promote our gigs as the heaviest band in Australia, that kind of vibe, because at the time, well, no one was playing that sort of stuff, So we eventually got more gigs, which led to more gigs, which led to more gigs, which led to more gigs, So we're on a bit of a roll, and we started adding songs, and at the time too, we were also writing new songs. So once we started writing newer songs, we were sort of letting those simple ones that, they're no good anymore. These ones are better.
Yeah.
And it was kind of leading into the middle of 86. We probably had, 10 or 12 or more gigs under our belt, and we probably had 10 songs as well. We were kind of doing both things at the same time. So rehearsing for gigs, but also, writing new songs. And we were kind of, let's go and do a demo. So at the time, CDs weren't even around. You're talking 86. CDs were not the norm. There was just LPs. So we thought, let's just go do a demo. We'll be able to send this demo overseas. There was a lot of magazines around at the time, Metal Forces, Kerrang, Mega Metal Kerrang, and a lot of fanzines. There was, if you opened up a Metal Forces magazine, you would see fanzines from all around the world. So you pick them as right, this is who I'm going to send a demo to. Bang, 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 bang. In those days, tape trading was a really big thing, If you've ever read the story, the Metallica story, Lars Ulrich, how they did their thing was this whole tape trading thing. So, all right, we thought, let's just pick 8 songs. We discarded, the Metal City and the Evils and that sort of stuff. And by that time, we'd had Lebanon, we'd had Liar, we'd had Blood, Death, Hatred. We'd written all these really cool songs. So it was like, yeah, we got to get these on a demo. So we rang up around a couple of studios, and we got into Studio 301, which at the time was on Castlereagh Street in the city, and it was a big studio. You know, it was probably the Easy Beats and all those kind of bands, AC/DC, all those 60s and 70s bands had recorded there. So it was, to us, it's like, oh man, this is, AC/DC's recorded here, that sort of thing. So we've got to record there. So we booked ourselves for, I think it was 3 days. It was all we could afford, in those days, studios. You can own your own studio for about $2,000, but in those days it was $2,000 a day to hire a studio. So, I think we hired the studio for 3 days, and we got this guy called John Darwish. He was one of the sort of in-house guys at 301 or something, or someone knew him, He didn't really know heavy metal or anything like that. So we went in and we started recording some songs, and after the first day, you'd go in the room and you'd listen to some playbacks. And we were listening to the playbacks, and we were like, wow, this is awesome. Like hearing your songs recorded, when you've never heard a song recorded before, it was just like blew our minds, and was, oh, wow, this is going to be huge, And John, the engineer and the producer guy, he was like, man, you should just put this on a record. I was like, no, this is just a demo. He says, no, guys, just make it as a record. And we're like, what? How do you do that? We had no idea. He's like, just put it on a record, go to some place and get them recorded and make some records. So we're like, okay, all right, how do you do that? All right, we'll figure it out. So he's this young bunch of guys from Australia, no idea what we're doing, no clue as to how to make a record. So, you don't, it's 1986, so you don't Google something. There's no such Google or internet. So, you get out the yellow pages and you look up LP manufacturers, vinyl manufacturers. So you scroll through the pages and you oh yeah, all right, well, let's pick this one. Or you ring up 3 or 4 of them, how much does it cost to do this, blah, 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 blah. So we picked a place. Hang on, I'll go back to the album, because we obviously hadn't finished the album yet. So second day, we recorded the rest of the songs. We recorded 8 songs, and basically we mixed everything in like a full. It was like 40 hours straight, or something ridiculous like that. We were pretty much there for 3 days. No one slept. No one, it was just, we got this out of the way. So we're just pushing things through. So once we got all that done, that's when we got the phone book out and we're searching through, how do we make a record? When do we make a record? Ring up, get on the phone, right, how do we do this? What do you do? And it's, you're going to have these parts and these parts, and you got to get the tapes and all this. In those days, you had like tape. It was everything was recorded on tape. These days, it's just recorded straight to hard drive. And so we got our tapes and we went down there and we had them all made up. It was a very big learning process. We basically had no clue what we were doing. We were relying on the people in the industry to sort of get us through. So this was sort of mid '86, and we were going to make a record. It's like, okay, we're putting out a record. It's like wasn't something that was in our plans until a lot later. So we go and get some records made up, and we didn't even know how to make. So I think we just made, I think it was like 4,000 or something. 4,000 records. We got a friend to make up an image for us. We were going to call it Mayhemic Destruction. So we didn't know what we were going to put on the album, so we could have put our heads together and it's like, wow, what about this beast, sort of just destroying Sydney and the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge and stuff. Everyone's like, oh, fuck yeah, that'd be awesome. So, okay, who's going to do that? I think it was one of Paul's friends, Paul's cousin actually, I think it was, who did the drawing, and when they brought it back to us, it's like, fuck, yes, this is awesome. Yeah, so we had to come up with some money, so, basically we scrounged up, and I think Keith put in a lot of the money at the time. So once we got all that started, I think it took quite a while. It wasn't an easy or a quick process. It was something that took quite a few months. I was going through all my diaries to try and figure out when did we make this thing, and I can see in diary dates, took the parts to this, got the album cover art done, got this done, which was leading up towards the end of 1986, and I think we were just waiting for it to come. We're waiting for it to get pressed and everything. And then there's another diary entry, which is the first week of January, saying the album's arrived, we've got the album. So basically we'd had a hit list of where we were going to send everything. So all it was a case of getting that hit list, packing them all up, sending them across. Obviously we sent one to Metal Forces and every record shop that was in Metal Forces. One of the record shops that we sent it to was a record shop in London called Shades. Well, Shades was to London what Utopia is to Sydney. Basically it was like where everyone went. It was, if you're a Londoner and you wanted to hear heavy metal, you would go to Shades. Shades had like the biggest ad in the Metal Forces, so that was one of the first places we were going to send it to. So anyway, we sent a copy over to Shades. We sent one to Metal Forces. We did all right. It was pretty much a masterstroke. Knowing who we were going to send it to was the catapult that took us from we got a record out to who is this band from Australia that sound like Metallica? So when it made its way into Metal Forces, we got a review. They did a review, which, hey, we got 99 out of 100, which at the time was better than like Anthrax, Among the Living, and better than Megadeth's. You know what I mean? Like, it was 99. It was near perfect, basically.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later on, when they were playing it in Shades, Shades sort of, when they got it, they put it on. It was like, oh, what's this band from Australia? Because you put a like a bio in with the record. So, they're from Australia. It's like, wow, let's check out this band from Australia. And they put it on, and basically we're cranking it up loud, and lo and behold, it's one of those pure strokes of luck that the A&R guy from Phonogram Records was in the store, and he's gone up to him and said, is this Metallica's new album? And then, no, this is like some band from Australia called Mortal Sin. He's like, oh, Mortal Sin from Australia, never heard of them.
If you're keen to hear future episodes, please hit that like, follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're hearing this episode on. You can get in touch and find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at The Heavy Corner, or you can check out the website at www.theheavycorner.com. The episode is recorded, edited and transcribed by me. A special thanks to Dan Gibbons for writing the music, and of course, thank you to our guests.